The following story is also available as a read-only version. Check the link in the description if you're interested.
The vapor hovering above the pool of Soulsilver shone mystically in the few places where the sun made its way through the canopy of buildings overhead. Thick drops of it fell through the floor of a factory above, creating a river of magical sludge flowing through the rocks with an almost infuriating languor. Down here, the pool was a location with a name to thousands of people. Eateries were named after its proximity to it, and those who were not were often described as the one by the Soulsilver pond. Children declared it their meeting point when they went out to play, as did young lovers in the late hours of the evening. Meanwhile, to the owners of the processing plant above, the Soulsilver was naught but a rounding error. A waste product in need of proper disposal, deserving only of the attention of the preemptively bribed health inspectors. Who could exert ownership over something that was in their nominal possession, but which they did not care about? Conversely, who could exert ownership over something they cared about, but did not possess? Maybe someone bought the land the pond is on, Kenny suggested. She was staring at the shining liquid as though it would start revealing all its secrets if she simply made it uncomfortable enough. They don't sell plots down here, only structures, Haya answered, poking around in the Soulsilver with her cyber arm. It was sprayed in almost the same pale blue as her skin, but didn't quite get there. The ground itself is owned by the city, which, as a corporate entity without singular consciousness, cannot assert itself as the owner of this pool. Maybe it's the stockholders. One of them declares ownership, activates the Soulsilver, and has the spirit within do their bidding. Kania was absent-mindedly playing with a tongue of flame flipping between her fingers. That's not how corporate ownership works. Well then, I'm out of ideas. Unless it really is the owner of the processing plant, of course, but I doubt he even knows that he owns that factory. With a grumbling stomach, Kenny turned her gaze to a nearby seafood shack. Haya shook her head. He owns the Soulsilver, but not the ground it is on, and as you said, he does not emotionally own the stuff. I mean, there's always, Connie commenced. No, we are not doing your crackpot theories today. The spirit of a pool of Soulsilver cannot, I repeat, cannot exert ownership over the pool it inhabits. Someone needs to consciously own and summon the spirit for it to even exist in the first place. Their minds don't work like those of people do. You've read 3 books on the subject, so you must be an expert. Connie shrugged. Without another word, she approached the takeaway. Hey, where are you going? Asked Hare. It's difficult to think on an empty stomach. A few minutes later, they were dining on wok-seared kraken scallops with sautéed vegetables, garnished with a spicy and sour sauce that changed colors every blink of the eye. This time of the day, the place wasn't very busy, so they had the elderly lady working the kitchen all to themselves. Do the people down here have any unusual concepts of ownership? Asked Naya, bypassing subtlety. The lady frowned. Her hands cut bell peppers, cucumbers, and bananas with nigh automatic movements. Well, when you own something, it's yours. She seemed confused at the question. How about communal ownership? Came the follow-up. You know, multiple people owning the same thing. Well, isn't that true for everything, really? The elderly lady slapped a large chunk of kraken meat on a cutting board and began slicing. I mean, yes, I own my business, and I own this shack, and I own the ingredients for the food I serve. But everyone has a liege. This time it was Haya who frowned. Her species had never engaged in feudalism and stuck to white-collar crime. Thus, she found it a difficult concept to grasp. Kenny, however, knew exactly what the woman was talking about. And who is your liege, if that's not a taboo subject? She'd encountered many a slum where the gangs preferred to work in the shadows, and nobody was allowed to tell anyone to whom their protection money went. Heck, She'd grown up in one of those places. Talon, of course. The old woman had a smirk on her face. I'm surprised you haven't heard of him. He's the best liege of them all. I haven't had trouble with hooligans in 30 years, thanks to him. It emerged that Talon was indeed quite the Samaritan. They found him on a small platform, handing out an assortment of electronics equipment in front of a tailoring business. They looked like third-rate wares, and judging by the strategic holes cut into the packaging, they were stolen. He was a giant of a man, muscular to an almost comical degree. His eyes were of a deep purple, and his skin was a pale shade of crimson, suggesting a good amount of vat-grown ancestry. His bald head was covered in white scars, and his canines were sharp and overgrown, giving him a resting facial expression reminiscent of a wolf. But, in spite of his appearance, Talon exuded friendliness and compassion. He was quick to invite K'nai and Hare inside, and offered them citrus water.
It's not every day that people of such station visit me, he admitted, but I feel honored nonetheless.
Who do you think we are, exactly? Hare's question was heavy with suspicion.
Researchers, of course.
Talon sat a carafe on the table.
You're looking into Soulsilver Pond, and why exactly it has a spirit when it shouldn't.
K'nai had a click from Hare's cyberarm. It was a familiar sound, and usually preceded a discharge of magical energy against someone who was a threat. If Talon noticed it, she could not tell.
I have my eyes and ears all over this neighborhood. There's a reason they call me liege.
He poured into 3 cups.
You can't just come in here, express interest in one of my greatest assets, and expect it to go unnoticed.
So you are the one who's controlling the Soulsilver spirit? Asked K'nai, tensing up. This situation could go sour very quickly, and if Talon dropped his mask, she needed to be ready.
How do you think a single man can defend such prime real estate from the plethora of gangs waiting at the gates?
Talon was still relaxed. He was either oblivious to K'nai's and Hare's sudden hostility, or he did not care.
I've controlled this spirit for a long time. I will continue to do so for many years to come. If you ask nicely, I can explain to you how I do it.
You're mistaken, Talon. We are here for the spirit, but we are not researchers, Hare said. We're enforcers.
A pity. Here I was, thinking that some actual scientists had taken an interest in my magic, and you turn out to be nothing more than some mercenary dogs from the upper city.
Talon's continued casualness had taken an eerie undertone.
I'll give you an opportunity to leave and tell your handlers that you found nothing down here.
How were you able to keep this secret for so long? Talon chuckled.
It was never a secret. This is just the first time someone from upstairs has bothered to look.
I suppose I finally took out the wrong guy. You used your spirit to murder a young man, said K'nai. You may consider yourself a good person, but that is unforgivable.
Ah, yes. I know the arsehole you speak of. He came down here, treated the place like his personal playground. His sins amount to much more than mine do, I can assure you as much. But of course, nobody cares when people from the lower city get hurt. Only when they defend themselves are they paid a visit.
This conversation is concluded. Flashes of light sparked forth from Hare's hand, coalescing from random jolts into complex hermetic symbols.
One thing we agree on.
Talon smashed his hand on the table, bursting apart the cups and carafe. The citrus water streamed into a sphere floating in the air and froze. In the exact moment K'nai was ready to unleash inferno upon Talon, she was pulled back by an unseen force, dragged out of the tailor shop, and flung into the rocky plaza alongside Hare. Talon punched the frozen sphere, and it burst into 1,000 daggers of ice headed straight for them. They were caught by a barrier of pale, blue light emanating from Hare's palm. She wasted no time going on the offensive, barraging Talon with a series of magical bolts as he jumped out of his stall like a maddened beast. He moved like a monkey, climbing the walls and rock pillars with ease, evading. K'nai launched discs of flame to where she anticipated he would go, but was thrown into the air after only 3 flicks of the arm. "The spirit!" she shouted, and Heya understood. The press of one button was all it took to activate the tiny charge she had deposited in the Soulsilver pond earlier. The spirit, invisible around them, cried out in agony as the neutralizing fluid corroded its Soulsilver. K'nai could feel the invisible structure around her writhe in agony, and its inhumane screams sent shivers through her bones. Talon pounced on her, jumping impossibly far, arms outstretched. His teeth were now fangs, and he had claws where only moments ago had been fingernails. A blast of energy threw him off course, courtesy of Heya. In an instant, K'nai was with him, hammering lashes of searing flame onto his exposed flank. A series of quick, purposeful arm movements later, Heya had constructed an ethereal cage around Talon, who was howling in pain from his burns. All around them, the Soulsilver spirit crumbled and dissolved as his home was destroyed. Some bystanders stared at them in shock, but most had nothing but anger and disgust in their eyes. K'nai and Heya both believed that they did good by locking away criminals like Talon. Seeing these people and the security he provided them, this was the first time they felt doubt.
If you liked this story and would like to hear more, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. A new short story is uploaded every Wednesday, and there will occasionally be another one in between if I find the time. Thank you very much for listening and have a great day.